Me anything about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. Everybody is welcome here so long as you are engaging in good faith. If you're engaging in good faith, you can be a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I'm not here to judge you or roast you or debate with you. This is not a debate show. This is not a show where people yell at each other and try to convince people that they're smarter or that they won the debates. This is just engaging on the substance, trying to get back to a shared reality about what our country and our government is up to. What is up, Susie? Good to see you again. So let's ask our questions. Throw your comments in the chat, shoot me a follow, and we will get to answering all of your questions. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So this is the show where you can ask all your questions about how to get started and what are maybe some simple things about how the government works that you don't fully understand yet. No one's going to make fun of you here for not knowing things. I don't believe in making fun of people for not knowing things or for trying to learn new things. So put your comments in the chat, shoot me a follow, and we will get to answering all of your questions about politics. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. Uh, I'm not going to yell at you for having a different political philosophy than me. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. O Track says, all peace when man no longer rules over man. I mean, yeah, government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what democracy is supposed to be. It's the Rocketeer says, well, I haven't been here all week. Did you hear about Lindsay? Yeah, it's been a rough week for Gramses. Andrew J. Rivers, great to see you again. Says, are the bags under your eyes baby related or government related? Porque no los dos, my friend Andrew. And yes, they are baby related. W1 says, can I join the live? The answer to that question is always maybe. Sometimes I let people up, sometimes I don't. If you really want to come up on the show, you got to be patient and stick around, and maybe you'll get lucky. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. It's the Rocketeer says, are you going to do a live tonight to react live to the speech or discuss it tomorrow? I'll discuss it tomorrow. I really can't stand watching Trump speak. And also, the evening time is kind of when me and the missus and the baby all kind of hang out together. So, Rocketeer says, I'm trying to figure out who to crash out with tonight. I mean, maybe check out the Crooked Discord. That might be a fun place to discuss, or my Discord. Maybe people are willing to have a watch party with you on my Discord channel. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. If you got a question, throw it in the chat, throw a comment in the chat, throw a question in the chat. If you like the show, shoot me a follow. I don't debate, I don't roast, I don't harass, I don't bully. Simi says, are Antifa groups just controlled dissidents by the government? No, there is no Antifa groups. Antifa is a philosophy. It is anti-fascist. It is, we don't like it when jackbooted thugs murder people in the street for no reason. We don't like it when masked agents kidnap people off the street and then send them to torture prisons where they are fed maggot infested food and shit like that. Okay. Arav says, where do you land on the political compass? I'm a progressive Democrat. Dom says, do you like Trump? No. Falcon asks, what is your ideology? Progressive Democrat. Some dude says, do true. I don't know what that is. Welcome, everybody. Bird is the family. Says, can you read code? I'm not a damn troll. That's not really a question, Bird. Nobody said, did you see the food? What food? What are you talking about? Welcome, everybody. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. So throw your questions in the chat. Chloe says, stupid questions doesn't have to be American. No such thing as a stupid question, Chloe. The reason why I put the American flags in my thing is because that's my specialty. You can ask a question about any politics, but I might not be able to answer it. SD Kings says, I wish Bane came out of nowhere and broke Trump's back. That would be quite a sight. Pop music therapist says, why did you ruin the end of Game of Thrones? I don't believe I did. Myron says, what makes America special? The same thing that makes every country special, which is that we have a unique collection of citizens with a unique culture, and yeah, but I mean, the same is true for every country. Louis Drew says, "Are the Falklands British?" I don't know. Kimberly says, "Refreshing POV." Thank you, Kimberly. Dom says, "Do you like the political system in the USA?" I do. There are some issues with it, but I prefer to have a democracy than a not democracy. Rennie says, "When is the next Berenstein Bears book dropping?" I have no idea. Kieran says, "How mad was you when Trump was sniped?" I was flabbergasted. I still don't really think that that was real, but it seems pretty sketch to me, pretty sus. What is up, S.E. Morgan? Great to see you again. No James says, "Why does the right say the left isn't for America?" It is part of a misinformation and propaganda campaign to make it seem as though left-wing voters or left-wing politicians are bad people. Dom, I already did that one. Chloe says, "If you could support one UK Prime Minister, who would it be?" I can only tell you who it wouldn't be. Nigel Farage. It would not be Nigel Farage. B says, "How can Trump be liable for rape and still be president and not get impeached?" Because the only mechanism by which he can be impeached is through Congress, and Congress is right now being controlled by the Republican Party. And the Republican Party doesn't really give a shit if their president breaks all the laws. They just are happy that they have a president of their party, that they can nominate judges and staff agencies and pass tax cuts for the wealthy. The Republican Party is party over country. They care only about their own power and accumulating their own wealth and doing favors for their billionaire buddies. So yeah, if we had a Congress that was filled with Democrats, then 100% Trump would not be president anymore. But the American people, in all of their wisdom, have chosen to give all of the political power to the Republican Party, despite everything that they have ever done and said. So yeah, ain't my fault. I fucking told everybody not to do this. Fishing Patriot says Democrats are the party of the rich. That is inaccurate, Fishing Patriot. If thank you, it's the Rocketeer. That is a great mute. James says, "Then say the president doesn't control it after Trump started a war, stopping all oil and raising it." Not really sure what that means. Let's see here. Esebio says, "Just like Democrats don't care about their presidents breaking the law either." That is inaccurate. Esebio. Can you tell me one Democratic president that broke the law that Democrats refused to impeach? B Turtle says politics is a pendulum. Yeah, kinda. Muiz says, "Do you support the current president?" No, I do not. Clara says, "Will Trump finish out his term?" I mean, I think the only thing that could reasonably get him to not finish his term is if he physically passes away, or if Democrats get enough seats in the Senate to impeach him, to remove him from office. Leo says, "What make JFK as a president?" That's not a good question. Danny Panda says, "Why are people so against proving that you're a citizen to vote?" So, Danny, the issue is not proving if you're a citizen to vote. The issue is adding hoops for citizens to vote in the hopes that they will then not vote. Because right now, the issue of non citizens voting basically doesn't exist. A right wing organization called the Heritage Foundation did a study on this, and over 10 years, they found like 5 instances of non-citizens trying to vote. So you might ask yourself then, why do Republican politicians want to force you to prove that you are a citizen before you can vote? And that is because they want to make voting more difficult so that fewer people do it. The Democrats have come to the table with a compromise. They have said, okay, if you want voter IDs, make them free and easy to get. And the Republican Party refuses to allow that to happen because they don't want voter IDs to be free and easy to get. They want them to be hard to get and expensive so that fewer people will vote. Irish Page says, "How can Lindsey Graham's sister take his spot?" The governor of Louisiana is in charge of filling that seat, and in all of his wisdom as a Republican, he has decided to fill that seat with a completely unqualified human being. All right, Dom says, "Would Europe be cooked in World War III?" I don't think so. Drex says, "Why would they want fewer people to vote?" Well, it's not just about fewer people to vote. It's kind of two things. Direct. The first thing is that statistically, when fewer people vote, Republicans do better. And so they're kind of like working on that assumption that if they can just get fewer people to vote, then they'll win more elections. But also, the tactic of voter ID is very strategic. It is stopping people who live in democratic areas from being able to get the necessary documentation. And the way they do that is by closing down DMVs and government offices in those areas, which they've already done. Also, poor people. Poor people tend to vote for Democrats as opposed to Republicans. And if you add a $80 surcharge on voting because you need to get your birth certificate or whatever, then suddenly there are a lot fewer poor people voting. Bloop says every person has an ID. They need it for welfare. They need it to drive. He needs to go anywhere. That is not true, Bloop. Dom says, is China cooking the US right now? Yes, 100%. Late Night Special says, that's not true at all. Can you tell me one thing I said that was inaccurate? TKS Daddy says, correct, that they are dismantling state supply of records. I don't know if that's happening. Clara says, chances of AOC for 2028? I mean, she has to decide to run first. Susie says Republicans have always relied on voter suppression to win. That is 100% accurate. Ecuadorian, great to see you again. I can't. I would never run for president. Is what you're. It feels like that's what you're asking. Dom says, will Russia win against Ukraine? I don't think so. Bloop says, you're not Kamala, only won the state that had no ID law. That is inaccurate, Bloop. TKS Steady says, they're dismantling access through things like libraries. I mean, yeah, generally speaking, I agree with that. BitNevo says, should RFK face prison time for stopping the tracking of Clyspora last year? I don't know what mechanism you could use to do that. There is such a thing as qualified immunity where politicians can kind of like get a pass on any deaths that occur because of their policies. But I'm sure that there are things that he's done that are illegal, So, yeah, throw the dude in jail. Hella Good says Democrats have always relied on illegal votes to win. That is a lie. Hella Good, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Ice in the Fryer says, what is going on with the military merger with Israel? I believe it's dead in the water. Bloop says, no, it's not the name, the state, she won that has IV. Bloop, I don't think you're here in good faith, so I'm going to go ahead and block you. Also, your spelling is atrocious. Dari Dada says, why is this coward not daring to talk about Israel? I haven't seen any questions about Israel yet, Dari Dada. Would you like to ask a question about Israel? Okay, Claire says chances Elon goes to jail after Trump is out of office because I have a lot of SpaceX stock. I definitely don't advise owning SpaceX stock. I'm not qualified to give financial advice, but I definitely don't advise having SpaceX stock. I think there's probably a good chance that Elon goes to jail unless he just dips out of the country. Clark says, will Vance be our next president? No. Optimist says, why do you defend Democrats so much? Because they're a way better party and they've done a lot more good and less damage to the country than Republicans. Dom says, would the Western world lose in World War III? I mean, who are they paired with? Reed Michaels says, Jack Smith lied to Congress. That is inaccurate, Reed Michaels. Ask a question or you're out of here. User a whole bunch of numbers says, I voted for Trump every time. I don't have enough money to live, only eat one meal a day. I'm really sorry to hear that, user. And I desperately hope that we can get some politicians in that will actually help fix your situation. Smith says both parties are Israel lovers. That is not true. There are a record number of elected Democrats that are voting against sending money and weapons to Israel. If you are looking for the politicians that stand up to Netanyahu and that stand up to AIPAC, they are all in the Democratic Party, full stop. Okay, let's see here. Dougie Fresh says Jack Smith lied to Congress. That is inaccurate, Dougie Fresh. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Reed Michael says Jack Smith Operation Arctic Frost side of the Senate. That's a block. Congratulations. Dave Ferguson says Trump's in office for 16 years. Good luck. I don't think he's going to live that long. User a bunch of numbers says I am Israel and love the USA. What do you think about Netanyahu? Dom says against Russia, commies, and so on. Oh, I've got no idea. B says, how did AIPAC come along in the picture in our country? How is that even legal? So the Republican Party has done a lot of work to make lobbying more like bribery, more like legalized bribery. They are behind every Supreme Court case that has made the expansion of money in politics, and lobbying is part of that. AIPAC is funded with right-wing billionaire dollars, and so American right-wing billionaire dollars. So they are allowed to operate as not an agent of a foreign government. Okay, Scranton Stranglers says Mike Johnson's statement are prime Democrat political ads. That is accurate. Dan Blackroyd says Mom Patrol is fucking unhinged. Who's Mom Patrol? Is that a real thing? Okay, Citizens United and PACs being legalized. That is accurate. David Igor says when communism in the U.S? ? I mean, employee-owned companies already exist, and I would argue that that is communism. Dave Ferguson says, you guys are watching a movie. What's going on? They got you fooled. Dave Ferguson, I don't know what you're talking about. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Angel says, American politics only. If you ask about non-American politics, I might not be able to answer, but you can ask whatever you like. Clara says, chances Epstein files get fully released if a Democrat wins the presidency. I think there's a pretty good chance with the victims' names redacted. Izzy says, Ivanka bought trademarks for voting machines from China. Is that true, Izzy? I did not know that. Dom says, is communism a failed project? No. No, it's never been tried unless you count employee-owned companies. But there's never been a communist country. Ian Niles says those that still believe in our political system are still asleep. I disagree. Our political system has done good and it has done bad. It just depends on who's in charge. Listener says if Trump suspends midterm elections, civil war? Question mark. Trump does not have the authority to suspend midterm elections, and also I do not advocate for any kind of violence, war or otherwise. GRU asks why you Americans have attacked the whole Middle East. Isn't that strange? I mean, I don't want that, but the American people voted for Trump and Republicans, and they love starting forever wars in the Middle East. All right, TKS Daddy says she was essentially handed trademarks for voting machines through China. I know about the vote. I know about the trademarks. I did not know they were about voting machines specifically. Oliambung says, "Why am I taxed on overtime?" Excellent question. Don says, "Every dual citizenship individual should be restricted from donating to any political group or PAC." I don't think that's necessary, Don. Small Peener says, "Dems had presidency, House, and Senate 21, 23. What did they do? Nothing about voter suppression." No, that's not true. The Biden administration actually sent election monitors to make sure that there were no threats of physical violence against poll workers, because threats against poll workers started going up when Trump started saying that poll workers were stealing the election in 2020. It is accurate to say that the Democratic Party also put forward legislation to try to stop voter suppression, but the Republican Party filibustered it, so they were not able to pass it. Small Peener. Dom says, did Trump fail in Iran? Yes, without question. Ice in the Fryer 2000 says, why are seeds able to be patented? It seems unethical. I agree with that. TKS Daddy says, filed for in 2016, Ivanka's Chinese trademark for a payoff in 2018. Yeah, but were they about voting machines? That seems like a stretch to me. Okay, Dan Blackwood says, Apex influence, while a problem that needs addressing, is also strategically exaggerated. I completely agree with that, Dan Blackroyd. Listener says, what will Trump's address to the nation be about? He is most likely going to talk about the 2020 election. He's going to claim that there was fraud, that he really won. He's going to potentially try to use it as justification for doing a whole bunch of illegal shit to fuck with the vote in 2026 and 2028. It is essential that people do not watch his speech. He is going to be lying. It is not going to do any good for you to watch the speech. Reporters will watch the speech and they will tell you what is in the speech, but just don't watch it. Don't give him the eyeballs. Don't give him your ears. Don't give him your life hours. You have precious few hours on this planet. Do not waste them listening to that ding dong. Not from here says, you are ignorant. That is not a question. Not from here. Ask a question or I will boot you. Bruh says diesel prices going up. That is accurate. Thank you, Trump, for that. Jacob says Trump might sign Pro 2A laws for the sake of votes during the election year. I mean, they'd have to pass the House and the Senate first. Dom says, does the USA need Europe? I think every country needs every country. TKS says it was about Chinese interference, was attempted, was reported, and was completely ineffective. You know, I'm a little skeptical of that, TKS Daddy, but I'm not saying it definitely didn't happen. All right. Stavros says, what do you support? Because I am not familiar with your content. I'm a progressive Democrat, but this show is not about being a progressive Democrat. This show is about engaging with people on the substance. So even if you're a Republican voter or you are more of a centrist Democrat and you have questions that you want to ask about what's going on in politics or what's going on in the government, or even just like, why would I be a progressive Democrat when I could be something else? Like, all of these are totally fine questions. This is not a live stream just for people that agree with me. Pink Lemonade says, was the U.S. responsible for Cuba? Can you be more specific, Pink Lemonade? What happened in Cuba that you think the U.S. might be responsible for? Ketchup says, we need to reform the Supreme Court. 100%. Small Peter says, I may be a little bit of a nut, but that just sounds like complicity. You can beat a filibuster. Not if you don't have the votes to beat the filibuster, Small Peter. So, yeah, I don't really think that that's a valid argument when the mechanisms of the government basically said that Democrats were not allowed to pass that legislation. Amir says, what's the worst event of the 20th century? Probably the Trump presidencies. Dom says, did you vote for Kamala Harris? Yes, I did, proudly. River 147 says, does your country support the UK still on the Falkland Islands? I have no idea. Amir, I did that one. Dom, I did that one. Dan Blackburn says, the Supreme Court should have more seats at the very least. Yes, 100%. You know, Dan, it's interesting. Some people believe that adding seats is the most extreme Reform for the Supreme Court. Lots of other court watchers are saying things like, um, what's the word? A code of ethics, an enforceable code of ethics. Potentially an entire other court that operates in between the sort of like appeals court and the Supreme Court, so that so they can't just pick like whatever cases they want. Term limits is another one. I am personally for all of the above and adding seats. But yeah, I think some people view adding seats as like a war of escalation where we add 2 seats and then the Republicans add 4 seats and then we add 6 seats, and I'm like, fine. Like let's have a 200-person Supreme Court. Like I don't give a fuck. Like that would just make it harder for the Republican Party to steal the Supreme Court in the future. Okay, some dude says, if you can use a magic wand to have one rule in our system, what would it be? No billionaires. Bruh says, would Republicans dare change the filibuster rule? You know what's actually interesting, bruh? They potentially could, but they don't want to, because there are some Republicans that like the filibuster because it stops the worst excesses of the Trump administration. Like, they don't want to pass the Save America Act. They view that as a toxic piece of legislation. They think it would be bad for the country and even bad for their voters. And they are able to use the filibuster as an excuse for not being able to vote on that. So, yeah, I definitely think we should get rid of the filibuster, but after Trump is gone. Like, you don't get rid of you don't like get rid of your nuclear weapons when an alien is attacking your civilization. You get rid of your nuclear weapons when you are living in a time of relative peace. Bubba Yoda says it would also help the Democrats steal the court. Your bias shows that is inaccurate. The court has been stolen, Bubba Yoda. The Democrats need to fix the court because the Republican Party broke it. They stole it. They broke it. It needs to be fixed. Dare says, I'm interested if DSA is going to go like a Tea Party movement for the left or if it will split. I don't think there's no value in the Democratic Party splitting. Like the whole attitude of the tactic of divide and conquer exists for a reason. Like we shouldn't be advocating for the Democratic Party to split up into 2 smaller parties that the Republican Party can then just fucking dominate politics forever going forward. So yeah, the Democratic Party, the strength of it is it being a big tent and it having a whole bunch of different types of people within it. Antonio says, can someone reply to this so I know I'm not comment bans? I did. Congratulations. Ketchup said, a corporate Democrat is always better than a moderate Republican. 100% accurate. Keith Schultz says, let's have a uniform wealth tax on all Democrats. Why on all Democrats, Keith? Why not on everybody? Do you like Republican billionaires only? Seems pretty sus to me. User a bunch of numbers says there's no value in the Democratic Party. DSA needs to hold the Democrats accountable to get leverage. That is wildly inaccurate. User a bunch of numbers. There is a lot of value in the Democratic Party, and I'm happy to go into details if you need them. Ghostburger says, why should we care so much about politics instead of living our lives? Because politics has an influence in your life. If you are having trouble finding a house, if you are having trouble affording higher education, if you are having trouble putting gas in your car, if you are having trouble putting food on the table, if you're having trouble getting medical care, all of those are issues that are caused by politics and can be fixed by politics. So it behooves you to pay attention to politics so that you know who to vote for, so that you know what to protest, so that you know what to strike, so that you know what companies not to give your business to. It's really, politics is extremely important. Okay, it's the Rocketeer has one of my favorite quotes in his chat there. You may not fuck with politics, but politics will fuck with you. 100% accurate. Joe Padilla and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Okay, Ketchup says ignoring politics is like letting someone decide for you without your votes. That is 100% accurate. Keith Schultz says, let's make California Democrats deliver their babies in China. So I've discovered that you are not here in good faith, so you are out of here. All right, let's see here. Dare says, oh, I'm not saying as a good thing or a bad, but I'm curious to your assessment to their staying power. To whose staying power, Dare? What was the first part of that comment? Where are you? First part of the Dare comment. Where are you? Yeah, I'm scrolling up there. Oh, yes. Okay, I see. It's about the DSA. I'm not saying a good thing or bad thing. I'm just curious your assessment of their staying power. I think that the DSA recognizes the value of voting for any Democrat over any Republican. So I would be, I am skeptical that they would try to split off, and I would be extremely suspicious of anybody, even if they are in the DSA, of suggesting that they split off. Connie Sindel and Joe Padilla, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Ile asks, Israel or Palestine? No need explaining, only answer. Okay, well, it's my live stream. I can answer however I want. I support the citizens of both of those countries, and I'm against the governing bodies of both of those countries. Faga War says, I would love to see a DSA America First coalition. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm not fully against that. Faga War Productions. Joe Padilla says, are there any unredacted files we can see? There are. I have not gone through them. I believe that even if you go through the redacted files, there is still a lot of damning information there for Trump and people in Trump's orbit. Mike Johnson seems nervous about the midterms. Thoughts? I don't know if he is. He is such a massive piece of shit. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how much faith he has in his party and Trump's ability to steal and cheat and lie their way into victory in the midterms. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sorry. I'm just trying to like think about Mike Johnson and what his priorities are and how deep in the MAGA slush he is. Yeah, that's 50-50 for me. Sorry about that. Antonio says, thoughts on tonight's statement. It's going to be a bunch of lies. It is going to be Trump trying to justify fucking with the upcoming elections, potentially trying to say that the two Democratic senators from Georgia are invalid. He's going to lie and say that he has evidence of massive voter fraud and that he really won in 2020. Just don't watch it. It's pretty bad, I would say. All right, Mikhail Meme, excellent. I'm glad you saw my DM. Who is use your whole bunch of numbers? I don't understand that question. Faga War says, I will build a new conservative party run by Mormons and New York Italians. Oh, man, a marriage made in heaven, man. L says, what was the reason for closing the Strait of Hormuz? You'll have to be more specific, L. Do you mean why did Iran do that or why did Trump do that? Dave Ferguson says, Trump is already a 16-year war president. That's documented by the Supreme Court military. Dave, I find you sus as hell. I don't think your comments are accurate. So maybe you should ask a question or leave. L says USA. So the Trump administration believes that they can use power and collective punishment to get a better bargaining position against Iran in the current war. They are going to fail. They have tried this before. They have failed before. So they're just going back to a tactic that didn't work before and just hoping they can inflict enough pain on the Iranian government and people that they can be in a better bargaining position for ending the war in the future. But it's not going to work. So, it's a bad idea. Dom says, do you like gays and that stuff? I like everybody. I like people that are straight. I like people that are gay. I like people that are trans. I like people that are bi. I like men. I like women. Not sexually. Just I like everybody. Everybody's a good people. What a fucking Zen yoga master thing. Everybody is good people. Everybody is good people. Guilty as charged. All right. Derek Ramirez says, ask only USA politics. You can ask about other countries. I might not be able to answer. Okay, TKS Daddy says the Bricks and Fig story demonstrates Utah church government corruption. Don't know anything about that. TKS Daddy, I gotta be honest. I'm happy you're here. Some of the things you say sound a little conspiracy theory-ish, so I would appreciate it if you stuck to questions going forward. Because again, every time I read your comments, I always have to be like, I don't know if that's a real thing. So Joe Padilla, Muzz King, Jack, and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. And that means that it is Finger Hearts O'Clock, the best part of every day. Finger Hearts O'Clock. TKS Daddy, Maxwell and the CIA, that is not a question. This is your final warning. I'm going to have to mute you if you keep on not asking questions. Somebody whose name I can't read says, thoughts on reform. Big old thumbs down on reform. Do not vote for, do not endorse. Connie says, I find it funny how US politicians right now feels like a hellhole, while UK politics is a circus. I mean, I don't know anything about UK politics, but it is definitely not great here in America. Mikhail Meme says, you always say user a whole bunch of numbers. So sometimes people don't bother to give themselves screen names, and then they just have a name that is user and then a bunch of randomly generated numbers. Mikhail Meme. It is a cute way of me saying they have no screen name. Joe Padilla, Muzz King, Triska, and Susie. Thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. All right, let's get back into these TikTok comments. User unavailable says, hey back. Joe Padilla says, are we going to bomb Cuba? I think it's probably likely that we're going to be doing some sort of military intervention in Cuba. I think the only thing that could stop that is the continued quagmire that is the war in Iran. But that's like 2 wars ahead of us trying to annex Greenland. So, everybody in Denmark can breathe a sigh of relief. I think we're probably going to be too busy with, countries that the population is brown instead. Dom says, is the Trump party modern Nazi Germany? You could make an argument, Dom. There are a lot of analogies. There is an issue in American politics of people using Nazi or Hitler for just like for every argument, whether you're on the left or the right. So it's kind of lost a little bit of its efficacy and relevance. But if you look at the history and you look at the things that Trump and his party are doing and advocating for, like there are a lot of similarities. Like a lot of it lines up, like a scary amount. Doc David says, are you following the Senate and the House committees on UFOs, UAPs? I not religiously. I see things every now and again. I mean, I think it's fun. I don't think I don't think it really has any relevance in our day-to-day life. So, Jack says, do you believe in systemic racism? Yeah, I'm pretty confident that systemic racism exists. Derek Ramirez says, what's your thoughts on Nayib Bukele? Possible dictator in progress. Oh, I don't remember who Bukele is, Derek. I'm so sorry. The reason why I put the American flags is not because I prefer American politics. It's because when you start asking me about other countries, I start getting world leaders confused and stuff like that. It's not my area of expertise. Bras says, why does USA prioritize other countries rather than their own people? Well, America can, first of all, America can do both, bruh. Like there are administrations in the past that have done a lot of work to try to help American citizens and have also done a lot of work to try to help every other country in the world be at peace and have all the resources that they need for food and shelter and stuff like that. If you want to know why our current government is ignoring the will of the people and ignoring taking care of its citizens in lieu of just starting forever wars and putting money in Trump's pocket, is because the current president and Congress is Republicans, and they don't give a shit about people. They only give a shit about their own power and money and helping out all of their billionaire buddies. Dom says, will World War III happen? I doubt it. Log says, thoughts on Mike Laturis for Florida governor. Don't know anything about the Florida governor's race, so sorry about that. Mr. Bunny says, will he cancel the midterms tonight? There's a non-zero chance that Trump will try to announce something like that, either canceling the midterms or declaring state of emergency or declaring that they're going to be seizing voting machine or declaring voter ID or something. He's going to make some proclamation that he's not legally able to make, sign some executive order that he's not able to make, use some justification for the FBI going into Democratic cities and stealing their voter rolls and shit like that. But yeah, more specific than that, I can't tell you. It's just going to be a bunch of lies about election security and the 2020 election. Aviator. I finally figured out how to say your name. Aviator says, and he will get sued in court and lose like he knows 90% of the time. Accurate. Log says, thoughts on Mike Hunt for Democratic nominee 2028. Is he a real person, or were you just trying to get me to say Mike Hunt on the live stream? Dom says, why is Trump messing with his own allies? Trump has no allies. Trump only believes in a transactional relationship. And so if you are not currently putting money in his pockets, then he does not give a shit about you. Odyssey says class passed mere demands for inclusion toward overcoming the whole need political form itself. Can you clear up that question, Odyssey? Doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, Jack says, do you believe that if Newsom and Vance are the candidates, our country is screwed? No, I think that if Vance gets elected, then the country is screwed. But if Newsom wins the primary and then wins the general, I think he's going to be a perfectly average B, somewhere in the B range of president. From B minus to B plus, that is the kind of president that I believe Gavin Newsom will be if he gets elected. He's not my first choice in the primary, for darn sure. Mikhail Meme says, do you think smoking, vaping, and snoozing is a big problem nowadays? Yeah, it's not good for you, and I don't really see it as doing anything for you, yeah, I wouldn't advise anybody to do it just because what are you doing? You're paying a corporation to give you a dependency, like doesn't really seem valuable to me. Jack says, who would be your first choice? Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut. Dom says, why do people vote Trump? Misinformation, propaganda, information bubbles, culture war. There's a lot of reasons. T says, who would be the next Speaker of the House if Hakeem drops out? Oh, I've got no idea who's even being considered. TKS Daddy says, the main reason I would like Newsom as president, it might delay California exit. TKS Daddy, I have warned you about statements. If we by any measure lose California, we'll be weaker against Republican takeover. TKS Daddy, I'm going to mute you for the rest of this live if the next thing that you say is not a question. Okay, Dan Blackwood says, I like Bashir. I like Bashir too. Andy Bashir is great. The Democratic Party has a really deep bench right now that I am super excited about. People are always asking about Newsom, which I think is evidence that most people aren't following politics all that closely. But yeah, there are so many great potential nominees in 2028. I desperately hope that, we get an opportunity to run one of them. Mark Gramling says the main reason Don is president is because we want America great again. Mark Gramling, that is inaccurate. That is also not a question. That is also America. America was not great during the Trump first administration. He's not making it great right now. If you want to ask a question, let's get into it. Mark says, who, me? No, there's a different Mark, Mark Gramling. Derek Ramirez says, is the USA the greatest country in the world? No, no country is greater than any other country. Certain governments are better than other governments, and I would say that our government is currently very much not the greatest government in the world, but every country is just as great as every other country. All right. Mikhail Meme, I would not recommend using snooze or smoking or vaping, Mikhail. L says, which parties are opposites? Is it like Democrats against liberals? And what are the Republicans then? So the two political parties are Democrats and Republicans, and they are sort of like the polar opposites. There are different factions within the various parties. So mostly the Republican Party is what's called MAGA, which is the Donald Trump version of being a Republican. But there are, a handful of other political philosophies in there, like neoconservative and stuff like that. The Democratic Party generally breaks down into the progressive left and the centrist Democrats. Some people might even call them the corporate centrist, corporate shill Democrats. Gabagool says Somali is as great as Sweden. Yeah, they are both equally great. Do they both have equally great governments? Probably not, but they are both equally great countries. Joe Padilla, Triskafon, Sarah, and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my second Finger Hearts goal of the day. And we're at 40 minutes. We are within striking distance of getting a monologue today, guys. So, all right, D Hack says, I'd like to ask a question. Then go ahead. Throw your questions in the comments. Throw your comments in the chat. Shoot me a follow. There's lots of ways to be, to be a part of it. Mikhail says, it's hard. Many people around me do it, even though they are not 18. Do not succumb to peer pressure, Mikhail. Meme. Just because all the cool kids are doing that shit or all your friends are doing it doesn't mean it's a good idea. I never smoked a day in my life, even though a bunch of my friends smoked in high school and in college. And boy, oh boy, are my lungs thanking me for that decision now. D-Hack says, why is no one talking about how many people died from USAID cuts? So people are talking about it, D-Hack, potentially not enough people, potentially in certain media circles or certain social media channels, people are not talking about it. But I am well aware that I believe it's going to be more than 1 million people who died unnecessarily because of USAID cuts, so that Elon Musk could shut down organizations that were investing his companies, and so Elon Musk could secure a bunch of government contracts for his companies. He just killed 1 million people. You know, um, yeah. So I desperately hope that we can unelect every Republican and replace them with a Democrat, so that we can hope for some sort of accountability for that action. You know, it's pretty fucking depressing to think about. The world's first trillionaire. One of the things on his resume was basically manslaughtered 1 million people, and also like took a bunch of money away from American farmers and shit like that. You know, yeah, yeah, it's a real fucking bummer, and it makes me mad. It makes me really mad that the Republican Party allowed this to happen. And I want you to really think about that, because like Congress's job should have been to stop Doge and to stop Elon Musk from doing all that shit. What they did was illegal. It was not allowed. The Republican Party is fully complicit in that. Every single elected Republican, from president to dog catcher, is complicit in those deaths. They are complicit in the deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Goods, and the two other deaths that happened recently. Mr. Arujo, I believe, is one of the person's name. Um, yeah, the school children that are dead in Iran, the fishermen who got murdered off the coast of Venezuela, everybody that is sitting in an ICE detention facility being fed maggot-infested food, everybody who lost money because Trump and his kids are just enriching themselves all over the globe, cashing in on the presidency so they can get even more money. It's fucking disgusting, man. And every single Republican politician who is currently elected could be stopping it. And they are choosing not to, because of their own corruption, because of their own cowardice. It's pathetic. It's enraging. And I hope that you will all help me to do the work of unelecting every single one of them, because I don't think you get to keep your job when you could have stopped the unnecessary deaths of 1 million people. A lot of them children. Children who were starving, children with diseases that we could have done something about. And it would have cost us $0 extra. This is money that was already spent. They just decided to let all that medicine and all that food just die on the shelves. Anyways, let's get back into these questions here. Willie says, power's been out for 3 hours. I blame Trump and Netanyahu. Oh my God, where, Willie? Where are you at that the power's out? You don't have to say that if you don't want to tell people where you live. All right, Tough Shit says, love your live streams have turned me more left. Oh, I'm really happy to hear that, Tough Shit. Are you doing the work? Are you part of the solution? Are you doing stuff to try to get people to vote for Democrats going forward? I'm happy to have your vote, as a new one. But we got to get more voters out there. Let's my daughter was born 3 months ago, and how about, as a present to her, we get our voter participation up in the midterms? Dare I say we could get up to 70% in the midterms. All right. Joe Weiss says, does the impeachment process start the night of the midterms? If Democrats win a majority in the House, then yeah, probably. But we won't actually see the hearings until all of those representatives are set. Joey says, would you debate Trump or not? So it's a good question. Short answer is, there is no debating Trump. He's a liar. And if you're debating somebody who will just make anything up in order to win the debate, that's not a debate. That's just like, it's theater, basically. I would relish the opportunity to be face to face with him and be able to call him a piece of shit to his face. I would love to be in some sort of a televised debate with him so that I could basically outline all the ways that he is a piece of shit to everybody watching. But yeah, there's no winning a debate against somebody who's just going to lie and try to use like bullshit debate tactics to make it seem like they're winning. Okay, bruh says, why did Trump defund cancer research? He wanted more money for ICE. He wanted more money for his own pocket. He doesn't give a shit about people who have cancer. He believes that if poor people are struggling, then he's winning. So yeah. Dat Who says, don't all politicians lie? No, not all politicians lie, Dat Who. In fact, if you look at the party breakdown, if you look at the various political parties, Republican politicians tend to lie a lot more and tell way bigger lies than Democratic politicians. You know, when people say all politicians lie, they're kind of like lumping all these lies together. It's like you said 1.5 thousand when you meant 1.6 thousand or whatever. Whereas Trump will literally say things that are like that guy's a murderer, you know. Um, I've never done anything wrong in my entire life. Like lies, like massive fucking lies. Okay, Pizza Pimp says, why would they cure cancer when they'll take half your shit when you die? LMAO. Don't really know what you're trying to get at there, Pizza Pimp. Tiger Shark says, Trump supporters have lower IQs. I don't know if that's accurate, Tiger Shark, but I don't believe in disparaging voters. So let's focus our attention on the people with power, the elected Republicans and the right wing talking heads like Ben Shapiro and Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens and all those fucking liars. Tucker Carlson, you know. Tough Shit says, I live in a Republican neighborhood. What should I say to turn them to the left? Really good question, Tough Shit. So that is a really big project. Trying to take somebody who is a right wing voter and turn them into a left wing voter, massive project. And that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. If that's something that you really want to do, I would recommend checking out a book called The Persuaders. It's by a guy named Anand Giridharadas. He's written another book that I highly recommend as well. You can find those books and other books that I really like about politics in my Discord channel. Link is in the bio, so you don't have to worry about writing any of that down. So yeah, just go to my Discord channel if you're looking for any of these books that I like so much. There's also an organization called Swing Left that is doing a new thing called deep canvassing, where they teach people how to have long conversations that do change their minds. So you could check out that and see if there's any opportunities for doing that kind of canvassing where you live. That again is Swing Left. The initiative is called Ground Truth. That is, in my opinion, the exact solution to our current political crisis is more people doing that kind of deep canvassing. So yeah, if you need any help with that, if you want me to try to get you whatever link you need to sign up for that, let me know. Because I desperately want you and people like you to be boots on the ground, actually talking to people and changing hearts and minds. CJO says, what's the point in voting if the working class loses anyway? The working class loses or wins depending on who is in charge. CJO. The Rail Workers Union won their paid sick days because Biden was in charge. The union is losing currently because Republicans are in charge. All right. Aviator says Swing Left is also a Substack, I believe. They probably do have a Substack. King Giradora says, do you have a favorite cereal? Cocoa Puffs. New York Steve says, we are doomed. No, we're not. New York Steve, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Dat Who says, is the Save America Act about voter registration or about voting? It's about neither. Dat Who, the Save America Act is about voter suppression. The Trump administration is trying to pass a law that would make it harder for people to vote, and they want to strategically keep people that are going to vote for Democratic politicians from being able to vote. And if they accidentally keep a bunch of Republican voters from voting at the same time, they don't really care about that. They're willing to bet that just having that much control over the electoral process means that they will never have to worry about a Democrat ever getting elected again. All right, Dat Who says, how is the SAVE Act harder to vote? Okay, so what the Save America Act is going to say, it says in it basically, is that there's going to be a bunch of new hoops that you're going to have to jump through in order to be able to vote. You're going to need your birth certificate. You're going to need a passport. If you are a woman who got married and then changed your last name to your husband's name, you're going to have a bunch of extra documentation to prove that you are the same person. It is putting in the hands of this government your ability to get the necessary documentation, because they are the ones who are going to decide whether or not you get a passport. And if you are applying for a passport and you live in a Democratic neighborhood, or they have a history of your voter registration as a Democrat, or they know that you voted Democrat in the past, they might not give you your passport. They might not let you have it. Additionally, they are planning on shutting down government organizations that would be able to give you those documents in Democratic areas. They've already done it in states that require driver's licenses to vote. They've shut down DMVs in Democratic areas so that it's harder for those people to get that. Additionally, all of those forms of ID and documentations, they cost money to get. And some people don't have $15 to spare, let alone 80 bucks or 100 bucks or however much it costs to get all those various pieces of documentation. People need it to be easier to vote and not harder. So why are we making it harder? The Trump administration is going to say that there's all sorts of voter fraud. That's the reason why we need this. But there is no evidence of that. There is no problem that needs to get solved that voter IDs would fix. Even right-wing organizations like the Heritage Foundation have studied this, and they have found that voter fraud is virtually non-existent. It basically doesn't exist. And if you whittle it down even further to specifically non-citizens voting, it's basically it is mathematically equal to zero, the number of times that has happened in America's history. Alrighty, Mikhail Meme asks, will Gavin Newsom run for president? All the things that he is doing make it seem as though he is going to run for president. Love Lynn says, no evidence, look at LA. I have looked at LA. I live there. There is no evidence that there was any voter fraud in LA. Love Lynn, you're in question jail, Loveland. If you ever say anything in my chat again that is not a question, you are out of here. I will let that sure get away in case there was a delay in you hearing my ultimatum. But I do not let people come into my live stream and say things that are inaccurate. All right, that LOL counts. So you are out of here. Congratulations. CJO says, what is a candidate for office you like? I like Anand El Sayed. Is that his name? Anand El Sayed. That's his name, right? Anand El Sayed. He's running for Senate in Michigan. He's dope as hell. I like him a lot. I like Tellerico a lot. I like Ossoff a lot. Who else is running right now for re-election? Ooh, I like Sherrod Brown in Ohio. He's dope as hell. Andy Plum says, how do they know there is no fraud if nobody is identified? I mean, how do I know that there's no ghosts if I've never proved that there's, like, what are we talking? Just because you've never seen a ghost, does that mean that there's no ghosts? Andy Plum, it's really easy to say, like, oh, the reason why we haven't found any voter fraud is because the voter fraud is really, really good. So you're saying that the lack of any evidence of voter fraud means that there's voter fraud? Like, make it make sense, my guy. Alrighty. Thank you, Everett, to Abdul El Sayed. I don't know why I say Anand El Sayed. Yeah, Abdul El Sayed. He's great. Bruh says, thoughts on James Tellerico. I like him a lot. He's dope as hell. Andy Plum says, why not present your ID? Because not everybody has ID, Andy Plum. Also, why? If it's not solving any problems, Andy Plum. Consultant 79 says, why aren't Americans protesting in the street? We are. Have you seen any of the No Kings protests? They've been pretty fucking massive. CJO says, what is something the average person could do to prevent ICE expansion? Voting for Democrats, encouraging other people to vote for Democrats, putting political pressure on your elected representatives if they are Republicans. What else? Protesting outside of ICE detention facilities if you don't mind putting your life at risk, because ICE loves murdering and beating the shit out of people. Owen Lee Duwinem says, Delaney Hall, ? You'll have to refresh my memory. Is that an ICE detention facility? Owen, I forget. Ready. Consultant says, no, like shutdown of the whole country. The Republican Party and the billionaire class have made it very difficult to survive in America, such that people don't have a lot of extra time and money in order to just, like, not go to work, basically. There are a lot of people who are trying to work on this, who are trying to get a general strike. But in order to do that, you need to have, like, massive infrastructure for community support, food kitchens, mutual aid societies, things like that. And in a country of 350 million people, like, that's a big effort. Now, if people were more comfortable, if they had more money in savings, if we weren't suffering under hyper monopolization, then it would probably be a lot easier to do that. But that's part of the reason why the billionaires did it, is so that we would be so desperate to survive that we would not be able to take the time off to do that kind of shit. Alrighty, it's the Rocketeer says doing daily protests is unfortunately a luxury most cannot afford. That is 100% accurate. Alrighty, Aviator says I tried to log on to renew my passport last week and it was down. That shouldn't impede voting. That is 100% accurate. Andy Plum says, what would be the downfall of making everyone get an ID for voting? Andy Plum, some people can't afford to get IDs. So what you would be doing is you would be disenfranchising 20 million Americans from being able to vote. Do you think it's better if fewer American citizens are able to vote? Or what if we were able to get everybody to vote? Do you think that would be better, Andy Plum? Liamson says, are you a Trump fan? No, I am not. Very much not. Andy Plum, I gotta be honest, you seem a little sus to me. Like, I've been talking about this for a long time. It seems like you are willfully ignoring all of the things I am saying. So give me some indication that you are actually hearing me, that you are taking the things that I am saying and letting them bounce around in your noodle a little bit. Because I'm like, it's not, it's solving no problem. It would keep 20 million Americans from voting. It is a time expense and a money expense that a lot of people cannot afford. It is a voter suppression tactic that Republicans want to use to try to keep themselves in power. So where are we missing each other here, my guy? Bruh says if someone loses their ID right around election time, they don't get to vote? ? Exactly. Badger 75 says free government issued ID for voting. The Democratic Party has put that forward as a compromise. The Republican Party is not joining that compromise because they don't care. They don't care about actually getting people their IDs to be able to vote. They care about it being a voter suppression tactic. Okay, Mikhail says thoughts on Trump's dance moves, things he does with his arms. I mean, he's weird. He's charmless, you know. Addleston says both parties are the same. That is wildly inaccurate, Addleston. Different things happen when different people are in charge. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which was only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. The parties are not the same. Joe Biden was the first president to ever walk a picket line. The parties are not the same. Brian the History Chaser says no ID to vote is the same as people writing their PIN numbers on their debit cards. I don't believe that is accurate, Brian the History Chaser. Roel says, isn't it also a poll tax, which is also deemed illegal unless the ID is free per federal courts? Yes, that is 100% accurate, Roels. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has been captured by the Republican Party, so I do not have any faith that they would actually vote in that way. All right. Kevin Day says Republicans are idiots. I do not believe Kevin Day in disparaging other voters. If you want to say Republican politicians are idiots, may not argue with you there. Addleston says they're socially different, though. They both fund colonialism and capitalism. Maybe, but one of them does it a lot more, and one of them does it a lot less. And better is better, and worse is worse. Additionally, if we vote for different politicians, we can get different outcomes. So if there are Democrats that do that, we can vote for different Democrats in the primary. Addleston. So yeah, please don't spread misinformation on my live stream about the parties being equally bad or being the same. Addleston. Addleston says, well, that is true. Where will that get us in the long run? If we keep on voting for better in the long run, then we will eventually have a really great country. We will eventually have a government that actually supports its constituents. You know, doesn't that sound good to you, Addleston? Joey says, what's your job? I'm a professional touring stand-up comedian. Andy Plum says, do you believe ID is necessary for anything? If so, for what and why? I mean, how about for driving a car? Seems like a pretty cool thing. If you want to be able to use a car, which is really dangerous, if you're not trained to do it, then you should be able to prove that you're good at driving a car beforehand. Seems pretty good to me. Roel says, aren't only 5 states enhanced real IDs even qualifying under the SAVE Act? I'm not really sure about that, Roel, so sorry. Ellis says, bro, do you keep ignoring my communism question? This is my first time I've seen you ask a communism question. Adelson says, but the better is so minuscule compared to how much actually needs to get done. I completely disagree with that. The reason why not enough has gotten done is because, number one, Americans keep ping-ponging between putting Republicans in charge versus Democrats. So Republicans undo all of the good that Democrats have done and add more damage for the Democrats to fix. So they have bigger jobs to do when they eventually get into power. Also, the billionaire class has a lot of power and influence. So they are able to try to stymie the Democrats from being able to do any of the good that they want to do. Progress is slow because of the Republican Party and the billionaire class. If we dismantle those things, then progress will be as fast as we need it to be. Addleston. Okay, thank you, Bailey Boy. I appreciate that. Galanga says, do you support a United Ireland? If the people in Ireland want that, then I say go for it. Okay, CJO says, in American politics, both parties are majority capitalist by nature. I disagree with that. I believe that we are seeing a growing majority within the Democratic Party that does not believe in in free market capitalism solving every problem. I think you're probably going to get, if you ask Democratic politicians, they probably tell you they believe in more of a mixed model, though for political reasons, they probably would just say like I'm a capitalist, but I believe in capitalism with regulation, or I believe in what do you call it? I believe in like altruistic capitalism, stuff like that. TJ Spriggs says, do billionaires give money to Democrats? Yes, but they give way more money to Republicans. And the Republicans cut taxes for the billionaires so that the billionaires have even more money to spend on our elections. Also, the Republicans change vote campaign finance laws so that the billionaires can put even more money into our political system. Addleston says, you cannot dismantle the billionaire class without abolishing capitalism. Disagree with that, Addleston. We could just tax billionaires out of existence. Andy Plum says, so controlling who drives a car is more important to you than proving who you are before voting. The voter rolls prove who you are before voting, Andy Plum. You would know that if you ever voted. You have to sign a thing, and your signature has to match. You have to register to vote, and then they check that against your social ID number. We are not letting people vote willy-nilly in this country. If so, maybe there would be a whole bunch of voter fraud, Andy Plum, but there ain't. Andy Plum, the reason why you are sus as hell is because you are trying to talk your way around this in a million different ways that don't make any sense. You are trying to use debate tactics to prove an improvable point. Unfortunately for you, I know a lot about this issue. So you're not going to be successful. You are only going to get yourself blocked because I do not allow people in my live stream who have an agenda, who are just trying to convince people that a bad idea is a good idea. Alrighty, Fog of War Productions says, I'm writing that Mormon GOP divorce dissertation. It's already 4 pages long, double spaced. I can't wait to read it, Fog of War. I probably never will. Addleston says, for example, both parties support Israel. That is inaccurate, Addleston. There are a record number of Democratic politicians voting against sending money and weapons to Israel. If you are looking for the politicians who are currently in office who stand up to AIPAC and stand up to Netanyahu, they are 100% Democrats, elected Democrats. So it is wildly inaccurate to say that both parties support Israel. It is not a real thing. Okay, BKMPL says, what would you say is the most confusing government? Oh, I've got no idea. L says, bro, how many times do I need to send my question? It appears, L, as though your question is getting filtered by the TikTok algorithm. So maybe you are asking in a way that is offensive. Andy Plum says, that's what you're doing. That's why you're mad and making people identify themselves. Nope, Andy Plum, congratulations. You're out of here. All right. I gave you so many opportunities, Andy Plum. You can't even hear me because you're gone because I blocked you. So you're not even going to hear your mom orgasms when I fuck her. CJO says, didn't Joe Biden also allow Trump to stack the Supreme Court? No, Joe Biden had absolutely no part of that. I don't know. I'm trying to search for any justification for that, but no, that is not a thing that Joe Biden ever had the power to stop. L says, what are your thoughts on communism? There we go, L. I found it. I like communism if it's the workers owning the means of production. I like communism. Oh, hey, I got flagged for bullying. How about that? I don't see how that's accurate. All I was doing was telling people whose mamas I'm fucking that I'm fucking their moms. That just seems to be like a nice thing to do. All right. Droid says, "Are you referring to the Save Act?" Yes, yes, I have been talking about the Save Act. All right, everybody, I got to get out of here. These have been great questions. This has been a great live stream today. That's the reason why I went a little bit long, but I got to go. I got to go help my wife with the baby. Molotov Cocktail says, billionaires will move. They can move, Molotov Cocktail. Molotov, my regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. I would love to come back and tell you all about how you're being a snrub. You know, for those of you that, if you know, we got some real fucking snrub action happening over here on the Twitch chat with Molotov. Molotov, come back. I'm happy to get into this with you, but I am wrapping up right now, and I literally cannot afford to do any more time on this live stream today. So yeah, everybody, if you want to support the show, you can send gifts on TikTok, you can send bits on Twitch, you can be a fan or a super fan on TikTok, you can be a subscriber on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. I'd really appreciate that. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, though there was a very fun incentive at $10. DMs are open. Email me through my website. Hit me up on my Discord channel. Link for all that good stuff in the bio. I want to be a resource for you guys, so use me as a resource. Do not be shy about reaching out through one of the various channels. Lastly, please do the work. The only way that we get out of this is if we all do the work. If you don't know what the work is, go to the Discord. If you still can't figure it out, shoot me a message. All right. Be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Molotov Cocktail, please come back. I would love to tell you more about how billionaires leaving is a fake threat that will actually not hurt America at all. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. So I will see you guys tomorrow.